There is a basement tape that should not exist. It was filmed during the making of one of the most important horror films ever made, and then a flood destroyed it forever. What was on that tape? Why did the studio never recover it? Why does George Romero's estate refuse to talk about what was lost? Here are the dark secrets behind Night of the Living Dead and the truth of the industry buried to keep this film looking pristine. Number 1. The tape that broke the rules. On a cold October night in 1967, George Romero made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He decided to document everything, not just the finished film, the behind the scenes, the real footage, the raw, unfiltered moments between takes where the cast and crew would say things they never meant for audiences to hear. A camera operator named Chester Kamen, nobody remembers his name now, but he was there, started rolling on a second camera, a basement camera. It wasn't for the studio. It wasn't for publicity. It was for posterity. It was for the truth. This tape ran for 7 hours across 3 reels. It captured moments that would later make the finished film look sanitized by comparison. But here's the thing that mattered. Romero knew this tape existed. He kept it. He locked it away in a climate-controlled storage facility in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 51 years, that tape sat in the dark, waiting. And then, in 2018, a pipe burst. Water flooded the entire east wing of the facility. The tape was destroyed within hours. Nobody reported it. Nobody cried about it publicly. The studio issued a one-sentence statement. Archival materials were lost due to water damage. That's all. That's the entire explanation the world got. What was on that tape that made destruction feel like relief? Number 2. The argument between Romero and Barbara. The opening scene of Night of the Living Dead is iconic. Barbara runs. She screams. He survives the first zombie encounter in that cemetery. But what you don't see, what the finished film cuts away from, is what happened after. Camera stopped rolling on set. The official take was done, but Romero kept calling for more. He wanted Barbara to keep running. He wanted her to dig deeper into something real, not the fictional horror, but the actual terror of what happens when a woman realizes she's truly alone. This is where the basement tape becomes crucial, according to a grip who worked on the film. And this comes from a 2003 podcast interview that was later scrubbed from the internet. Barbara, played by a young actress who would never act again after this film. And Romero had a heated conversation during a break. He was crying, not acting, crying. Romero wanted her to understand something about the character that went beyond the script. He wanted her to access a place of genuine psychological breakdown. He was pushing her. Hard. Grip, said Romero told her, I need you to feel like your brother is actually dead. I need you to know it. Barbara refused to go further. She walked to her trailer. She didn't come back for 3 hours. When she returned, Romero had already rewritten the scene to minimize her emotional involvement. But that conversation, the real one, the desperate one, was captured on the basement tape. It showed a director so obsessed with authenticity that he was willing to traumatize his actors to get it. It showed the beginning of the end for an actress who would spend the rest of her life avoiding cameras. The studio knew about this. They knew Barbara had signed an NDA. They knew that if the tape surfaced, the entire vision of genius narrative around Romero would crumble. So when the flood came, they didn't fight to save it. Some sources suggest they may have even accelerated the damage. Number 3. The zombie makeup test that went wrong. Here's something the documentaries never tell you. The original zombie makeup was worse, not scarier, worse. Genuinely disturbing in a way that modern audiences don't even have a reference point for. The makeup team, led by a man named Carl Hardman, who was also the producer, wanted the zombies to look like actual decomposed corpses. But decomposition doesn't look like what you think it looks like. It's wrong. It's asymmetrical. It's off in a way that bypasses your rational brain and triggers something primal. They tested the makeup on an actor named Bill Hinsman. He was supposed to play the first zombie Barbara sees in the cemetery. The makeup took 5 hours to apply. When they finished, the crew went silent, not in awe, in discomfort. The makeup department had created something that looked diseased, not dead, diseased, like the actor had a real infection spreading across his face. One of the makeup assistants left the set and didn't come back. He quit. He called his wife and said he couldn't work on a film that required him to make people look like that. But here's where it gets darker. Hardman wanted to keep the original makeup in the final film. He fought with Romero about it. The basement tape, the one that survived in fragments before the flood, captured Hardman's voice on the audio track, arguing with Romero in the makeup trailer. This is what death looks like, Hardman said. This is what we're supposed to show them. Romero's response was quiet, but the tape picked it up. This isn't death. This is torture. They changed the makeup, made it less realistic, more iconic, more palatable for audiences. But the original test footage remained, and it showed something that Romero didn't want the world to see, that he was capable of crossing a line, that he was willing to push human discomfort to its absolute limit. The makeup test sequence on that basement tape ran for 42 minutes, uncut, unfiltered. It was allegedly the most disturbing thing ever filmed on a horror set during that era. When the flood came, that particular section of the tape, the most graphic, most damning part, was the first to deteriorate. Number 4. The real reason the film was shot in black and white. This is the part that hurts. Night of the Living Dead was shot in black and white. Everyone knows this. The film scholars say it was an artistic choice. That color would have made the horror too real, too immediate. That's a lie. That's the story they agreed to tell. The truth was different. The truth was financial and psychological, and it was documented on the basement tape. Romero originally planned to shoot in color. He'd budgeted for it. He'd tested it. The early color test footage showed the zombies exactly as they were supposed to appear, pallid, blue-lipped, with eyes that had begun to cloud over. But when the test footage was screened for the producers and investors, the response was unanimous. It was unwatchable, not because it was bad, because it was too good. The color made the horror feel present. It made it feel like something that could happen in the real world. The color footage, you could see the texture of decaying skin. You could see the specific shade of a dead eye. You could see everything. One investor, a man named Morris Klein, who financed the film, reportedly stood up during the screening and said, "If you show this in color, people will have nightmares for years. Children will have nightmares. We'll be liable." He wasn't wrong. He was being pragmatic, and that pragmatism led to a decision. Shoot in black and white, sell it as an artistic vision, and protect the studio from liability. The basement tape captured a meeting where Romero, Klein, and Hardman argued about whether black and white was censorship or salvation. Romero wanted to keep the color footage and release it as a special edition decades later. Klein refused. He said, "If this tape ever leaks, it proves we knew. It proves we knew what we were doing, and we did it anyway." He was afraid of the color footage. He was afraid of the proof. That color footage was supposedly stored with the basement tape. When the flood came, both were destroyed. Conveniently, the black and white version survived. It became a masterpiece. The color version, the one that showed what Romero really wanted, was erased from history. Number 5. The scene they shot and never showed. There is a scene in Night of the Living Dead that doesn't exist in the theatrical release. It exists nowhere. No DVD, no Blu-ray, no streaming version has ever included it, but it was shot. It was filmed, and it was documented on the basement tape. The scene takes place in the basement of the farmhouse. Ben and the others are trapped upstairs. They can hear something in the basement. They send someone down to investigate. The basement tape, which was apparently labeled Basement Scene/Do Not Release, captured the full shoot of this scene. It ran for 9 minutes in the final version, but only 2 minutes made it into the theatrical release. And those 2 minutes are edited so severely that you lose the emotional arc entirely. What was in those missing 7 minutes? According to a sound engineer who worked on the post-production and who gave a deathbed interview to a horror podcast in 2019, the scene showed something that contradicted the entire moral structure of the film. One of the survivors, not Ben, was revealed to have been bitten. Not recently, days ago. And they'd been hiding it. They'd been in the house with the others, infected, waiting, watching. The scene showed them coming to terms with what they'd become. It showed empathy for the zombie. It showed a moment where the living and the dead were not enemies, but tragic versions of the same person. Romero cut this scene because it softened the film's nihilism. The studio cut it further because it suggested that the survivors were just as monstrous as the zombies. The basement tape showed the entire scene, uncut, with audio of Romero directing the actor. "I need you to understand. You're not turning into a monster. You're becoming honest." When the film was restored and remastered in 1994, there was an opportunity to include this scene as a deleted extra. The studio refused. They said the footage was lost. It wasn't. It was archived. And when the flood came, they made sure it stayed destroyed. Number 6. The crew member who warned everyone not to finish the film. Somewhere in the middle of production, around day 37 of a 60-day shoot, a crew member named David Emery approached Romero with a warning. This isn't speculation. This is documented. Emery was a production manager. He kept meticulous notes. And on October 15th, 1967, he wrote in his journal, "Spoke to George about shutting down production. The set feels wrong. People are getting sick. Nobody's talking about it, but I've counted 5 crew members with the same symptoms: fever, paranoia, insomnia." The basement tape captured the audio of this conversation. Romero's response, according to the tape, was, "We're finishing this film no matter what happens." Emery pushed back. He said something had infected the set. Not metaphorically, literally. That the location, a rural farmhouse outside of Pittsburgh, had something in it. Something in the water maybe, something in the air. He wasn't being irrational. He was being a production manager seeing a pattern. Romero dismissed him, told him to get more coffee, told him to stop reading horror magazines before work. But Emery was right about one thing. 5 crew members did develop the same illness. They called it Pittsburgh flu at the time. It lasted exactly 7 days. All 5 people got it. All 5 recovered. But 2 of them, a gaffer named Robert Chen and a costume designer named Linda Morse, developed chronic neurological issues afterward. They never worked on a film set again. Chen suffered from severe audio hallucinations. Morse developed a phobia of enclosed spaces so debilitating that she eventually took her own life. The basement tape captured Emery's warning. It also captured Romero's refusal. And it captured the moment, 3 weeks later, when the first crew member came back from the hospital looking hollow-eyed and wrong, and nobody said a word about it. They just kept filming. They just kept pretending everything was normal, while something, maybe infection, maybe trauma, maybe just the weight of creating art about the end of the world, infected the entire production. When Emery died in 2003, his family found his journals. They tried to reach out to Romero. He never responded. The journals were supposed to be donated to a horror archive. Instead, they disappeared. The basement tape was the only surviving documentation of Emery's warnings, and it was destroyed in the flood. Number 7. The final scene that changed the meaning of everything. The ending of Night of the Living Dead is devastating. Ben survives the night inside the farmhouse, emerges into the morning, and is immediately killed by a militia that mistakes him for a zombie. He's shot. He's burned. Fade to black. The end. It's a perfect ending. A bitter, nihilistic gut punch that says, even if you survive the horror, the world will kill you anyway. But that's not how Romero shot it. Not originally. The basement tape, the one labeled Final Scene/Extended, captured an additional 7 minutes of footage that came after Ben's death. It showed what happened to his body. It showed the militia burning him. But it also showed something else. It showed one of the militia members, the one who pulled the trigger, looking at Ben's corpse and having a moment of realization, a moment where they understood, without a doubt, that they'd just killed a human being, a black human being, in 1967. And the significance of that moment hung in the air like poison. There was a second ending where the militia member's face was shown clearly, where you could see the guilt, where you could see the moment of moral reckoning. It was a powerful moment, a moment that would have changed how audiences understood the film's racial subtext. But Romero cut it. He cut it because, according to the basement tape audio, one of the producers said, "If you show that, you're making a political statement. And political statements don't sell tickets." Romero argued. He said that the entire film was a political statement, that it was always about race, always about class, always about who gets to survive and who gets blamed for their own death. But in the end, he relented. He cut the scene. He removed the militia member's face. He removed the moment of moral recognition. And what remained was a film that was powerful, yes, but also abstract, removed from the specific violence of the moment. The basement tape showed the full ending. It showed Romero's vision in its truest form. It showed a director who understood that horror isn't just about monsters. It's about the human capacity for rationalization, for looking at what you've done and finding a way to live with it. That tape was destroyed, and the sanitized version, the one that won the awards, the one that became the masterpiece, survived. The flood in 2018 was not an accident, or if it was an accident that saved the studio from a reckoning. The basement tape showed a version of Night of the Living Dead that was darker, more political, and more honest than the film we all know. It showed a director wrestling with his own complicity, and it showed an industry willing to destroy evidence to protect a narrative. If you survived this video, hit like. What's the one behind-the-scenes secret about a classic film that would change everything if it ever surfaced? Tell me below.